I'm not reading that. Right, now, this weekend saw reports that a bonfire of EU laws that Boris is planning this coming week. One of them is he's going to bring back imperial measurements to UK shores. It's reunited the Brexit freedoms debate, as many celebrated the news as a statement of intent to further regain sovereignty, whilst others, decried it as ludicrous and unnecessary. So would having the freedom to use the measurements be a step forward for Britain or a step back? I cannot think of any better a debate to have. Joining me, a good friend of mine, he's a legend. Journalist and campaigner Mike Buckley and member of the Conservative think tank, the Bruges Group, Chris Davies. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Jeremy.
Where's Buckley? I want to see Buckley. Look at him. Oh, God, he's going, it's 7:30 on a Monday. What am I doing? What's wrong? This is a fantastic idea, Mike, isn't it? To go back to the times where Great Britain, you know, we can do our own thing instead of being told by all those foreigners what's right and wrong. Come on, it's great, isn't it?
Well, we can do what we want, but realistically, we're not going to. I mean, how many times have we heard this story about bringing back imperial measurements over the last 5 or 7 years? I mean, it seems to come out maybe every 3 months, something like that, and it never happens. And it's never going to happen, partly because it will just be too complicated and too expensive. Every retailer in the land uses kilos and metres and centimetres. They're not suddenly going to switch all the scales and all the packaging over to imperial measurements. It is what the Conservatives and what Boris Johnson is very good at. It's a story that gets everybody excited to distract us all from what's really going on, which is partly the fact of Partygate, partly the fact that he's changing the rules so that he doesn't have to resign for lying to Parliament.
I have to say, you see, MB and I would be politically miles apart, but I love him, Chris, because he just genuinely believes what he says. The Bruges Group, Chris Davies, you're all for this, I can tell by your face, mate.
Well, the truth is, Jeremy, that actually imperial measures has never got away. How do you talk about your height? Do you do it in centimetres or feet and inches? How do you talk about your weight? Do you do it in stones or kilograms? And actually, if you look online with a lot of online retailers, they actually show both. They show the grams, the kilograms, and the pounds and ounces. So actually, who cares whether butchers and greengrocers and, you know, the fabric makers want to do things in inches or centimetres? As Mike has said, it's very easy to convert 2.536 inches in centimetres and kilos, 400. Nobody asks for 453.6 grams.
All right, listen, it's not a maths lesson, it's 7:35 in the morning. Maybe then Mike Buckley is right. Maybe this is symbolic. Maybe as we head towards the Platinum Jubilee, maybe this is Johnson saying what he thinks Conservative supporters want to hear. Would that be your intimation of this, Mike?
I think so. I mean, I guess it's nice in a way for him to kind of come out with it around the time of the Jubilee. But I mean, realistically, how old would you have to be to remember imperial measurements in this country? You must have to be about 55 or 60.
All right, there's nothing wrong with that, Buckley.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all, but it's what I'm saying is it's clearly aimed at a certain demographic, as in people of a certain age. Now, whether any of those people actually want these measurements back or not, I don't know. But for everybody else in the land, they're going to need to do an education job on how these things work, because nobody's going to have a clue. I mean, if it was brought back, you'd be talking about mass confusion.
I must say one thing in Mike's...
It's not going to get brought back.
I must say one thing in that I agree entirely with Mike on, Chris, is that it almost feels like, and I think it's great, and I've said that, but is this just complicating matters? And more than that, I thought Brexit, right, this is what I thought, and I could be wrong, was all about getting rid of red tape and making things more simple. I thought a bonfire of laws was because we were bogged down in irrelevant rubbish from Brussels. Isn't this just going to make it more difficult for people? That's my point.
Without making the show too boring, where I do agree with Mike, it's definitely deflection. Coming so soon as it does after Partygate and another £15 billion of taxpayers' money on cost of living. But you're quite right. There are over 1,300 pieces of EU legislation embedded in UK law. And actually, I think time would probably be better served scrapping our involvement in the European Court of Human Rights and repealing the Human Rights Act. But there are plenty of people, and yes, I'm not 55 and over, but I'm not far away, that, as I say, if you look at height, weight, whatever measure you want to use, a lot of people still use imperial
Then
measures.
Shouldn't it just be personal choice? Why are we getting our knickers in a twist?
Yeah, look, retailers, but people will vote with their feet. If retailers start showing everything only in pounds and ounces rather than grams and people stop going there, they'll very quickly change back.
Do you think, Mike, and I know the answer, but I'm going to agree with you on this, do you think it's a bit symptomatic of a government that should be focusing on, well, frankly, a cost of living crisis that's about to decimate us even more? This morning we wake up and we hear that we've only got 4 days of gas and there's going to be rationing. I look back to the Queen, 70 years on the throne. There were rationing books in 1953. The way we're going, 70 years, there's a massive correlation between the two. No disrespect to anybody who might want this, but shouldn't we be trying to work out how we can become a bit more self-sufficient and work out people's lives a bit better, Mike?
Well, this is. I mean, you've made my other point that I was going to make on imperial measurements. Whose life gets better if we bring these things back? Nobody's life gets better. Not one person in this country is better off, has access to a better job or better education or better housing. It doesn't build any houses, doesn't fix any public transport issues, doesn't make anybody less poor. It's a complete waste of time. The government should be focused on making people's lives better, and they're not. And I will just comment on a couple of things that my colleague just said, which is, European Convention on Human Rights. We are bound into that by the Good Friday Agreement. I was in Belfast last week. That convention and the Good Friday Agreement are incredibly important to people over there, and the bedrock on which that society sits, and the bedrock on which peace in that society, is founded. We cannot question our commitment to human rights. If we do so, we risk unravelling peace and security in Northern Ireland, and it's frankly irresponsible to even suggest it. And on the subject of Brexit, whether it's about making people's lives better or whether it isn't, I mean, just a couple of things in the paper. I mean, even this morning, one was of British businesses saying, look, we cannot cope with all the extra red tape that we have as we're trying to trade with Europe since Brexit. It's a daily nightmare, is what they were saying. That is one thing. We've actually made regulation and red tape a hell of a lot worse by Brexit. And the other one was people going on holiday. People warned of huge queues at Dover, huge queues at St Pancras to try and get on the Eurostar, again, because of all the extra Brexit red tape. It was sold to us as taking red tape away. It's just made everything way more complicated.
That's an interesting view. I mean, the issue of human rights, no one is suggesting here that we're going to weaken human rights legislation. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, as a result of leaving the European Union, we are now a free nation. And therefore, no one in Northern Ireland is going to object if we make human rights legislation stronger. But it will be UK human rights legislation, not European. Why should we subjugate ourselves to the European Court of Human Rights?
It's written into an international agreement that we signed with the Republic of Ireland.
An agreement changed.
We cannot, it's not simply our decision, because that's an international agreement that we signed in good faith, back in 1998. And if we remove ourselves from that convention, that completely, destabilises the Good Friday Agreement. And people in Northern Ireland,
whether they
use this or whether they're Republican, they only have security and they only have belief in the future of human rights in this country if it's an agreement that is a shared agreement between here and the Europeans. Because otherwise, we might strengthen regulations now, but they will rightly question what a future UK government would do. Would a future UK government weaken those rights? And given that we've made an agreement with other nations to embed those rights, they know that we cannot unilaterally reduce those rights, which is incredibly important.
I could sit here all morning and listen to you two disagree, but I have to move on. Thank you. Mike Buckley, legend. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Their response to the fact that Boris apparently wants to bring in pounds, shillings and pence.